Adam Kaplan is our NFL insider on SportsGrid and on Coast to Coast. You see him here every Thursday with us, breaking it all down with a double shot. And in the second segment that we do with him, everyone loves Bust a Cap in Yo Ass. Speaking of said Bust a Cap in Yo Ass, Caplan went 11-3 against the spread last week, picking games right here on this very show. An unbelievable performance as you cleaned out the sports books, which we are always in favor of.
Yeah, look, it was one of the rare times we've done this show together, 5 years, that the favorites almost, not all, but almost all come in. But see, Scott, you and I have talked about this. The first 3 to 4, maybe sometimes 5 weeks, a lot of strange things happen, right? It's hard to predict what's going to happen. And then you start seeing things falling into line. You kind of see injuries. Okay, you understand what's happening. You understand what teams look like. It's never easy, but it gets easier to predict these things. And to me, when a team looks like they look, like after 5 weeks, you kind of know who they are. And that's why I felt last week I liked a lot of the favorites. Now, I don't this week, though. I like maybe more favorites than not, and we'll talk about the second segment. But, yeah, it is so rare. And the Vegas books got absolutely destroyed last week. There's no question about it. Because, again, it's the odds makers kind of know, right? We've talked about this. They do a great job. But when the dogs don't come home, man, and the public rides the favorites like they did, the books get smoked, and that's what happened.
Well, and then they get even with you the next week. So this week could end up being a bloodletting. They always get their money, and that's why they're evil and unholy during this evil month of Rocktober and for Halloween. So we'll do your picks in the next segment, but I wanted to bring up a couple of subjects to you before we talk about tonight's game in New Orleans. The first of which is the Jets and Adams. They got the deal done, and now Rodgers has his guy, and the two lovers are together again, just like they were in Green Bay. And then the second subject is Fields being benched for Russ Wilson in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, look, we'll do Jets first, and ironically, it's in the same game because the Jets will play at Pittsburgh Sunday night. But the bottom line is with the Jets is they're not giving up in the season, despite their record of 2-4. They've been on Davante Adams for months. In fact, it goes back to a year ago at the trade deadline, but they didn't get it done. But they got it done here. Talking to someone with the Jets, they're pretty happy with the way their offense looked. Yes, they lost. Kicker struggled. Greg Zuerlein. They had some issues in the red zone, but they moved the ball really well. And I know Allen Lazard has been a great story. He was awful last season. He gets this guy, Rodgers, back. What kept him on the roster is the $10 million fully guaranteed this season. That's why he's there. Did a good job. He now will be the backup to Adams. This helps him with not only in the red zone where they're going to be better, but now they could play more 11 personnel if they choose to under Todd Downing, their new play caller. They could spread teams out, and we're going to see this Sunday night when they're in Pittsburgh. I can't wait for this matchup because I want to see what this looks like. Breece Hall looked, by the way, very good in that game, though they lost to Buffalo. What's troubling about the Jets, though, is their defense. Where's their run defense? They're also not getting great pressure on the quarterback. That's a disappointment. They don't give a lot of points, but their defense has not been as dominant as we expected. But that, again, that's going to be a really good game. And then also on the other side with the Steelers. Look, I've covered this business 27 years. I can't remember the last time when a quarterback lost his job with not only a winning record. I get that Fields hasn't played great. Early on, he was really good. Last 2 games, not as good. But at 4-2, all the indications are that they're going to go back to Wilson, who, by the way, has had this lingering hamstring problem. I thought when I was with them for 2 days, he was over it. They had the setback before the season started. Now he's over it, so it's looking like he's going to get the job. This rarely happens, Scott. I went back and thought about this the last couple of days. Other than when Kurt Warner lost, and by the way, they had Eli Manning, of course. But in this case, other teams are looking at Justin Fields here for the future, who's on a 1-year deal as Russell Wilson is.
Right.
What kind of future does Russell Wilson have at 35 years old with his football team?
None.
Why not let Justin Fields start? I don't agree with this. I think it's a mistake.
Yeah, look, and not only that, he has a higher quarterback rating than almost half the league. And he had 2 tutties against the Raiders. I thought he played really well. He was in trouble several times and got out of the pocket and ran for big yardage. He threw a couple of ropes to Pickens in that game and came up big. They won big. They scored 32 points, which is another thing they never do. Last year they averaged 17 on offense. This year they were averaging 20 with him at quarterback, and he was winning. And then he gets the reward of all that is he gets benched for a guy that hasn't played in a year. It's beyond me. And then I said earlier on the show today that all this is going to make him do is leave Pittsburgh. After one, he's gonna go right out of Pittsburgh and get out and have a job somewhere else. All right, let's talk about tonight on Bourbon Street. The Saints have dropped 4 in a row, and they started the season with a couple of big, high-scoring games, and everyone started saying they were going to the Super Bowl, and they have looked terrible ever since, and they lost Derek Carr.
Yeah, and look, Carr's got the oblique injury. This could be 3 to 4 weeks. Those are really tough. If he's a baseball pitcher, you're looking at 6 to 8 weeks. So it's tough to come back from that injury. Spencer Rattler did a nice job last week. Here are the rookie from South Carolina who I sold the Senior Bowl. But let's talk about the Saints first here. They're down a minimum of 2 offensive linemen on the interior. Both starting receivers. Olave's out with a concussion. You can't play after 4 days with a concussion. You're not going to get cleared out of the protocol. And then Rashid Shaheed, their best deep threat, he went on IR today with a significant knee injury. So they're going to go with Bub Means, a rookie at the University of Pittsburgh. Had a nice game last week. And Cedric Wilson, a veteran, a journeyman receiver. They're really light on depth at receiver. That does concern me. You've got a couple injuries at linebacker on defense. That's an issue. So here's something I don't understand. You talked about how great their offense was. Now it's really struggling. I know their defense gave up 51 last week, but let's face it, Scott, how are they going to score? It's going to be hard for them to score. The total, Denver, by the way, is 3.5. The total's 37. To me, the play is under. I don't see how in the world the Saints are going to score against, by the way, a pretty good Denver defense.
Well, I mean, they got smoked last week, and Baker put 50-some on them, but they still scored 20-something, and there's no Patrick Surtain tonight. And I saw Denver's vaunted defense that everyone says is so wonderful, and they're like the Jets. Yeah. All I hear about is how great they are, and yet they lose at home to the Chargers, give up 23. That game went over, and then the Saints game went way over. So I don't buy any of that there's not going to be scoring tonight because guys are injured. I'll tell you why they'll be scoring is no Patrick Surtain, which means their back end is weak without him.
Yeah, and look, they are going to get Baron Browning back off of injured reserve. This just happened within the last hour. He comes off IR, and he's a good football player. Mike McGlinchey, by the way, will be back at right tackle. That helps Denver tonight. But look, this is one of those games where early on it looked like with Denver's turnaround, it looked like a good game. But New Orleans, as you mentioned, they've lost 4 in a row. They can't. They're struggling moving the football. They're down 2 starting receivers. A lot of 12 personnel tonight. Tight ends are going to have to be involved. Foster Moreau's done a nice job. And don't forget, Taysom Hill's out again with a very bad rim injury. And, boy, that is, by the way, one of the big reasons why they're not scoring is his absence. Boy, did he look awesome before those injuries.
Yeah, without Carr, without Hill, I mean, they're naked.
Yeah, it's going to be harder for them. You and I don't see this the same way. I think this is a low-scoring game, to be honest with you.
Well, we'll see what happens. Do you like Spencer Rattler at all? Do you think he has a future in the league?
Yeah, saw him at the Senior Bowl. Good arm. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's an aggressive thrower. I thought he did a good job considering the injuries they had last week. I thought he did a really good job. This thing, their offense was unbelievable for the first 2 weeks. But, the other thing is, Scott, since Sean Payton retired, they're not very good at home. They're just a very average football team, now middling, and they're spiraling out of control here. Denver right now looks like a team that could get the job done.
Well, we'll see. A big party tonight with Sean Payton coming back and Drew Brees getting honored. So we'll see how that plays out on Prime tonight on Thursday Night Football. Adam Kaplan is very popular on Coast to Coast, and fans love busting Cap in your ass. We'll get his picks. 11-3 last week against the spread. And he hasn't bathed since because he's so hot. He doesn't want to cool off. So he just went the whole week without anything. He used like Mando, just full body deodorant, and he got away with it. You can follow him on X at Caplan NFL. All right, first we got to break down a couple of things. Key game injury updates because there's a couple of huge games. Why don't we start with the Texans going to Lambeau to see Love and the Packers?
Yeah, and this concerns me for the Texans. I know they're 5-1, playing great football. They annihilated the Patriots last week. Now, in the secondary, Kamari Lassiter, the rookie, he's got a shoulder injury, doesn't look good. That worries me. Jimmy Ward, who plays safety, could also play nickel. He's got a groin injury, doesn't look good for either of those guys. Green Bay, by the way, who have been all sorts of banged up. 3 of their receivers are hurt, but they're expecting at least 2 of them to play. They played through some stuff last week. Jordan Love was on absolute fire after a bad game in week 1 when he suffered that MCL sprain against the Eagles. They're playing great football right now. The Packers have really turned things around. And their defense also is a great story under Jeff Hafley, the former Boston College head coach.
I got to tell you, I was talking about them earlier on the show that they're really tough to play at Lambeau. And Love, once he got his confidence going, Dobbs a couple of tutties last week, they are going to give the Texans all they can handle. Don't you think in that game? I mean, don't give me your pick yet, but don't you think that they're better prepared for this game than they were with the problems that they were having before when he was out?
Yes, and now they could spread it out. On your point, you could spread the Texans out. They're not very deep at corner. The advantage clearly with the Packers, but I got to give that you never count Houston out. They're really well coached. D'Amico Ryan's one of the best young head coaches in the National Football League, and that is an awesome game, man. The Texans are what a turnaround job they've done under GM Nick Caserio. You and I have talked about him for a long time, but he's drafted well. He signed the right free agents.
Do you think, Adam, that the North is the best division in football this year? 13 wins in a row for those 4 teams.
Yeah, still, boy, Baltimore, after that 0-2 start, people are like, what's going on? They bucked the trend. Teams 0-2 since 1990, a very small percentage of getting the playoffs, but the Ravens have turned it around. Your Steelers, I don't know how they're doing it. Cleveland's terrible. But getting back to that division, the NFC North, the Minnesota's the team. Like, who saw this? 5-0? You got to be kidding me. Absolutely kidding me. By the way, Aaron Jones has got a hamstring injury. You got to watch that for the running back for the Vikings.
Yeah, I can't wait to see who you're taking in that Lions-Vikings game. We'll get to that. Let's break down the other good one at Raymond James. The Ravens come calling to see Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. I think Baker Mayfield is an absolute badass. What he did to the Saints was just literally chew and spit them out. I love watching this guy hook up with Evans and Godwin and even Otten. He's got it all going with the Bucs. Break down this one.
Yeah, he's a baller, man. He's super competitive. Talking the Bucs, they love his leadership, his fire. Guys rally around him. He's a great teammate, very supportive. It's been a great story for Jason Licht, the general manager, like finding his quarterback who's still young enough, and you could always play well into your 30s at quarterback, and he's doing a phenomenal job. Now, Baltimore comes in healthy. Why have they been able to turn their season around? Very, very healthy. Derrick Henry, absolutely unbelievable. This ability to mesh Jackson's with RPOs with Derrick Henry, no one's been able to stop it. Their pass game's great. Lamar Jackson, after slow starts, playing great football. Their defense still worries me in the secondary. They're not playing great back there. The front's really good. They're clearly, by the way, that's why they're a favorite, though. They're on an absolute roll. By the way, they're minus 3.5 in this game, 49.5. Now, the Bucs, this concerns me. Mike Evans, Scott, he's had hamstring problems throughout his career. This does worry me. He didn't practice today. Now, this is their first practice. Jamel Dean, one of the best corners, he's also got a hamstring injury. And Rachaad White, how about, and he with his foot injury, he didn't play last week. How about Sean Tucker, an undrafted free agent out of Syracuse last season? I started him in fantasy last week. Can you believe that? I was forced to. I had a couple of running backs who were hurt, but Sean Tucker, number 44, he's now in the running back rotation no matter what happens for the Buccaneers. You're right. This is an absolute great game where the Ravens come on an absolute roll here.
All right, bust a cap in your ass. We start in London with the Pats and Jags. Jacksonville laying 5.5.
I call this the anemic ball. Both teams are terrible. Like the Jaguars to find a way to win. Boy, they were awful last week. The Patriots, hey, you know what? Drake May did a good job. He's a little bit better than I expected him to be, but the Patriots can't move the football. The Jags will find a way to cover this number.
Seattle at Atlanta at the Benz. Atlanta laying 3.
Yeah, Seattle's come down to earth after that 3-0 start. They've lost 3. Their pass rush is a problem. Atlanta's playing efficient football. They're finding ways to win. It's always hard to win in Atlanta for the road team. I like Atlanta to handle this number.
Buffalo laying 9.5 at home in Orchard Park against Tennessee with Amari Cooper on the roster.
You know, we've talked about this all season. Dogs getting 7.5 or more, covering at an unbelievable rate, but Titans are a terrible football team. The quarterback, Will Levis, is struggling. I like the Bills to roll by 10 or more.
Cincy laying 5.5 at the dog pound against the Browns.
Cincy played better. The defense was better. They had a couple of breakdowns in offense, but they're going to handle the Browns and Deshaun Watson, who should be benched.
Houston at Green Bay. Green Bay laying 2.5 at Lambeau.
Like Green Bay to handle this number. This should be a good one. I'm concerned about the Texans' injuries in the secondary. We just talked about them. Green Bay, the better football team right now. I like them to cover the number.
Indy laying 3 at Lucas Oil against the Dolphins.
Dolphins coming off the bye, but they're not getting good quarterback play. It's too bad Flacco doesn't look like Flacco's going to start. But boy, the Colts have injury issues. This is not a good game for either team. I think it's close. I like the Colts to cover.
All right, we got a Hall ask. Detroit at Minnesota at the bank. Minnesota laying 1.5.
I'm concerned about the Hutchinson injury. I like Minnesota to cover this.
Fail. Philly at the Giants. Philly laying 3 at Snoopy.
Both teams, major injury issues. I like the Eagles to rebound here and play better than the Giants and handle the number.
Vegas at the Rams. Rams laying 6.5 at SoFi.
Like the Rams to come out of the spy and cover this number.
Carolina at Washington at the Dump in Landover. Commanders laying 8.
Washington blowout.
Kansas City at the Niners. Niners laying 1.5.
Like the Niners to give the Chiefs their first loss.
Jets, Steelers. Steelers getting 2 in Pittsburgh.
I'm going to the well again with the Jets. Jets are going to find a way to win this and cover it.
You and yours, Caplan. Go watch Philly replay games, you and yours, son of a...